Hi everyone, this is Forrest for Faulty Lid. Today I have for you a guest appearance I made on the Omnic Lab Podcast. We talk all about Tracer and we go over a lot of stuff that wasn't in my guide. The Omnic Lab crew was kind enough to let me post the interview here for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. You can check out the Omnic Lab Podcast in video or audio format. I'll leave the links to their show in the description. They're a weekly podcast that talks about Overwatch strategies. I highly recommend the show. It's both entertaining and informative. Unfortunately, I did not have an hour's worth of Tracer footage available to use for this video. I tried to get more last night, but every competitive game I queued into had multiple people insta-lock DPS. I had to be a team player and pick Zarya so that we wouldn't throw the game. The gameplay I have for you is a mix of my games from last night and some Tracer clips I had lying around on my hard drive. It's the best I could do. Without further ado, here's the interview. I hope you enjoy it.
All right, guys, we are here with Forrest from Faulty Lid Gaming. We are going dip with Tracer. This is our second try, actually, because we already had a first interview, but unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we pretty much had to trash the interview away. And I'm so grateful for Forrest to be back and will be willing to redo this interview with me. That's very kind of him. But without further ado, welcome to the show, Forrest. How are you?
I'm good, Andres. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great today. I'm so sorry that we had to bring you back in again, but I'm glad that you came again to the show. And how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your background? How did you get to Overwatch?
Yeah, so I started gaming when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I don't actually know the exact time because I was so young. I'd have to ask my parents. But my family had a Nintendo and a Sega Genesis, and I remember growing up with like Mario, Double Dragon, Earthworm Jim, Sonic the Hedgehog, playing those games and kind of starting my gaming life really early and always having it as part of my life. When I got older, I was really into sports and I was really competitive there. But as I graduated from school, I didn't really have an organized sports league anymore. So Overwatch kind of came around at the right time. I was a huge Team Fortress 2 fan, and Overwatch kind of spoke to me when I first heard about it. And I was like, wow, that's like Team Fortress 2, like the next evolution of that type of game.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it was like the perfect game at the perfect time. I already had a huge interest in it, and I was looking for that competitive outlet in my life. So to have them both come together at the same time was just perfect.
No, I completely agree. And I can relate with that too, because I used to be very into sports when I was younger, and they give you that competitive edge, like that competitive fix that sometimes you're looking for. It just feels good to put yourself head to head with another person and kind of like measure how far you can take your abilities, your skills. And definitely video games can do that. And Overwatch definitely captured that essence. And I feel exactly the same way as you about Overwatch. It's just like my competitive fix.
Yeah, it's the closest I'm going to get to organized team sports at this point.
I feel you there. How about you tell us a little bit about your channel and a little bit of the guides that you do, because that's kind of how I found you online. I was looking over at some Overwatch content and I saw your guide linked somewhere, and I thought it was really well crafted. You did a really good job explaining the role of Tracer, which we'll go into a little bit later. And I went through some of your other guides, and I think you do a really good job. So how about you let us know a little bit about that, and where can people find you, all that stuff?
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for the compliments. My channel is called Faulty Lid Gaming, and we are on YouTube. The philosophy with my guides is that I'm trying to take like concepts I see in the pros, or just concepts that I've had from my own play experience, and then just translate them into like simple steps and like simple concepts that everyone can understand and incorporate in their own games. So I'm really trying to do with this Tracer guide is, I think there are plenty of guides out there that'll tell you how to like manage your blinks, or how to get pulse bombs or stick pulse bombs or whatever. But I don't think there are good guides out there for the heroes that tell you what that hero is supposed to do. Like for Soldier 76, we basically all know by now, his job is going to be to break Ryan shields and stop flankers and shoot down Pharah. But we only get to that information as a community by spreading it to each other. And I don't think we've done a good job of spreading that to each other for every hero in the game. So that's what I'm trying to do with my role guides, is give you guys a list of these are the things these are the duties that are expected of your hero. So that way, when you go and practice that hero and you try to get better at them, you're not practicing with no aim to what you're supposed to be doing whatsoever. You know your role, and now you can go try to execute it. And if you're bad at it, that's fine. You're still going to be practicing your role and hopefully getting better at it. So someday you will be doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you will be doing it well.
That's very well said. And that's kind of what we stand here at the Omnic Lab for too. So that is great that you have that. I definitely agree. Your guides definitely encompass all those things that you just said. I encourage everyone who's listening to this to check them out because you do a great job. But without further ado, let's actually get into it. Let's go into our Tracer going deep and tell you guys a little bit about how to play Tracer.
Cheers, love.
The first thing to start with is you developed like a nice little bullet point here on like your duties as Tracer. What you should be generally thinking of what to do with the hero, how to guide your trains of thought, how to engage, where to go. And I think you do a really good job of summarizing in 3 little points and let you go through them and kind of describe them a little bit to our listeners.
Yeah, so I think Tracer has 3 main duties that kind of encompass her whole role. And those 3 duties are for her to just secure kills, disrupt and harass the enemy team, and destroy Symmetra's constructs, like her shield generator, her teleporter, and her turrets.
Mm-hmm. Let's touch a little bit on the Symmetra one, because I think the other 2 are very important, but I think that the Symmetra is a nice little start because a lot of Tracers are not very aware that this is one of her duties, and I think Tracer is one of the best spots to really deal with Symmetra very effectively. One, you can get in the backline like super fast and help your team clear those turrets before they even engage. And once you know the teleporter's down, Tracer's like the one hero that can actually disengage from the fight really fast and go get the teleporter. How about you tell us a little bit about this and how you approach it?
Yeah, so like you said, Tracer's one of the best heroes in the game at getting rid of Symmetra's buildings. And it's so easy for you to get behind choke points and just quickly spray all those turrets down. So whenever you can do that, that's just a huge help to your team for something that would have been a huge hassle for them. So that's something you should always look to do. As far as the shield generator and teleporter, as Tracer, if you leave the shield generator up, you're basically throwing the game, in my opinion. Because the shield generator is really powerful, and it can be very difficult for your team to just try to go right through the front of the enemy team when they all have 75 more health than you. And you're kind of just playing into their hand if you do that. So when you're playing Tracer, I think when the shield generator's up, you basically need to drop everything and just go for the shield generator. You're just not going to win team fights unless you do that. Unless you have an ultimate combo ready, it's not going to get you very far, any type of fight that you do. So there's fights where I would just abandon my team just to go get the shield generator because it's worth it in the long run.
No, absolutely. And like one thing that a lot of people do is they get a little bit tunnel visioned and like the fight's going on, they feel like they need to be helping out their team, and they don't even think about the teleporter because there's nowhere to be seen. But it's a ton of health that the enemy team is getting from that thing. It's 75 shields times 6. That's the amount of health that you're having to deal extra, and that's just that much pressure on your team to have to be able to operate. So I think it's worth it, even sacrificing just 30 seconds from the fight and for you just not being there, and maybe your team just plays a little more defensively, farms some ults or something until you can deal with that teleporter. And then it's a little easier to engage. I definitely agree. This is a great tip.
Yeah, the shield generator is like another player's worth of health.
No, definitely.
The teleporter, though, I think is a little bit trickier to decide whether you want to go kill it or whether you want to stick with your team and stay with the fight. Because if you can stick with the fight and help your team out there, that might be your best option if you're just going to end up killing all the enemies and trickling them as they come in. Otherwise, if you can go get the teleporter, it's a good thing to go kill it. But there are some times when you maybe only have like 4 people alive and you're on like the first point of Hanamura, and if you go go get the shield generator. Now your team on point is down a DPS. Now you only have 3 players there. And I feel like you're really putting your team at a risk of just everyone dying if you go off to that teleporter then. So I think there's some situations where it is okay to leave those up. But as Tracer, you really want to be conscious of that and be weighing those costs and benefits in your head as you play, because it is your job to get rid of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. You got to make the judgment call. Also, with the teleporter, you bring up a good point, especially if you're able to win the point and now the teleporter is the only thing that is up. You abandoning your team to try to get it really leaves them at a weak spot. But if you stay with them, usually with the teleporter and stuff, teams tend to trickle in to try to stall you, and having more people on the point to get those trickling heroes can be a little more effective in that scenario. Let's talk a little bit about her other duties. Now that you've dealt with the Symmetra, you're paying attention to that. You know he's one of your priority targets. You mentioned that her other 2 duties are secure kills and disrupt and harass. Let's talk a little bit about securing kills as Tracer.
Yeah, so when I'm playing Tracer, whenever I enter a team fight, I'm always looking for what's the quickest thing that I can remove from the enemy team. What's the quickest piece that I can just take away from them? I'm always looking to get DPS or a healer, a main single target healer like Zenyatta, Mercy, or Ana. But I'm really just looking for anything. I'm looking to be an opportunist. So if Diva's gonna come over to my side of the team, or Diva's gonna fly over from their team to my team, and she's kind of overextending, I'm just gonna go fight Diva. I don't even really need to flank around or anything. I'm just gonna try to eliminate her as quickly as possible. So I'm always just looking for whatever opening I have to get a kill. Maybe it's one of their teammates are low on health and they're kind of backing off and waiting for a healer to heal them. Well, then I'm going to use Tracer to blink back to that person and try to kill them before they get healed. So when I say secure kills, it's really find any means necessary, any weak point available to you to get a kill as fast as possible and as early as possible before your team loses a teammate.
I think that the word opportunist fits Tracer so well. I love that word to describe her, because that's really what you're trying to do the entire game. You're trying to take advantage of enemies' bad positioning, or enemies that have been hit and are really low, or enemies that have that Discord orb, or maybe that Ana that is like way in the back and has nobody around her to defend her, but is doing a ton of heals. Tracer is super well positioned to engage in all of those fights, and also to capitalize when those things happen pretty much immediately. I think that not even Genji is as fast. Maybe like the only other hero that can cover equal distances is like Winston with his leap, and that maybe is even not that much. But with Tracer, you can basically get from one spot to the other instantly with your blinks, and you're able to capitalize, or like you said, be opportunist and take advantage of these situations really fast. So I feel like with Tracer, you're always have to be very aware and on the lookout of how the fight is developing, and make sure that you go where you're needed for your team to be able to secure those kills, and not let the enemy team keep healing them and keep the pressure on.
Yeah, like you said, you can be anywhere at any time. So a lot of it is just judgment calls and decision making as far as where do I want to be? What do I want to do right now? Because unlike other heroes, you have so many options available to you. You almost have infinite options available to you. So finding the triage of how you deal with those situations is just something that you have to learn over time by playing her.
Right. And let's move on a little bit to the third one, disrupt and harass, because as Tracer, you will not always be able to secure the kills, right? Sometimes the enemy team is playing right, and their Ana has a McCree right next to them, or she's staying close to the team, so that if you go in, you have a high chance of dying, or maybe they're not making as many positional mistakes. So you have to kind of nudge them a little bit. You have to put a little bit of pressure. And I think that's when the disrupt and harass really fits Tracer. How about you guide us a little bit through that?
Yeah, so I think harassing is valuable, but I also think it's kind of the lowest value Tracer can add to a team. It's like the bare minimum she can do. Ideally, those targets that you're harassing, you're killing. But if all you can do is harass them, there is some value to that. So the targets that I really try to harass more than anything are the healers, and I also think harassing the Reinhardt gets you to pretty valuable results as well. If you harass the healers, then usually you can get them to turn around from the fight. And the longer you can keep like an Ana preoccupied, that's the longer your team has heals and they don't. So that can be really valuable to your team. But there is definitely an opportunity cost of doing harassing. And because they might have 6 people on their team that are providing real substantial value towards actual kills. But if you're just kind of poking around at something, you might not be doing enough for your team to actually win the fight. So it's a very delicate balance when it comes to harassment.
Right. The way I see it when you're harassing with Tracer is you're trying to throw the enemy team off their balance. Like you said, there's specific targets that you want to use for this. You want to maybe harass the back of the Reinhardt so that he gets a little mad and starts yelling at his team about dealing with you, or maybe gets a little bit desperate, or not desperate, but impatient, and he turns back and tries to like go for you, opening like a huge gap in the front line for your team. Or like you said, harassing that Ana, maybe if you can't kill her because she is very well positioned, and maybe the Zenyatta is keeping an eye on her or something.
Yeah.
But at least just poking enough so that she gets distracted and can't heal her tanks, the Reinhardt and frontline stuff, and has to turn around and deal with you. At that point, you've in a way taken her out of the battle for a moment, opening again like an opening for your team. Or if she has to use the grenade defensively on her rather than throwing it at his Reinhardt or at your Reinhardt, more importantly. I think that's small victories that you can get with harassing that way.
Yeah, you can definitely bait out some abilities that way and get them to be used on you, which, like you said, you could just bait out a biotic grenade recall, and now they don't have it for the fight. So that's a pretty decent trade as far as the value to the team fight.
Right. Obviously, like you said, the best thing you can do with Tracer is just secure the kills and be on the lookout for those. And if you can't, then just be on the lookout for disrupting, throwing off balance the enemy team, stuff like that. Let's move on to the next part of your guide. You talked
I have one more note.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
On that.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think something I also try to do when I'm harassing with Tracer is sometimes I'll kind of bully someone, and I know it's a little mean, but I'll kind of pick a target. Maybe it's their Zenyatta or their Reinhardt or their Ana or their Winston or something that I know I'm not too scared of. I'm not in too much danger by, and just really kind of pick them out and fire at them a little bit more often than what I would for another hero on the enemy team. Just consistently keep going after that same person, especially like a Reinhardt or like something or a support that expects the other players on the enemy team to be helping them free. And when they don't receive that help, that really messes with the other team's chemistry, because they'll start like yelling at each other in voice comms. Why is no one getting this Tracer off my back? She's just shooting me in the back constantly. And that's an effective way to just break apart an enemy team and make them tilt.
No, I think that totally works. And it's something that you can definitely accomplish as Tracer. Like, not a lot of other heroes have that potential of... I like equating Tracer to like that mosquito. Like when you're sleeping at night, you have that mosquito roaming around your ear that you just can't get out of there. And it's just so annoying. And every time you squat at it, he just somehow dodges it. And then it's back like 3 seconds later. That's how I picture Tracer. And if you do what you do, like, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a game the other day where their Ana was doing a lot. I was playing Soldier, and their Ana was keeping everyone alive. We didn't have much pressure on her. So I was like, we can have this happening. We were down 2-0 at that point. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go Tracer. And I went Tracer and literally only focused the Ana. Like, I was the most annoying Tracer in the world towards that Ana, to the point where like sometimes I would even kill her and take the time to just run all the way to their spawn and kill her again at the spawn, like kind of like ignoring their team. But it had a huge psychological effect on the enemy team. Eventually, we ended up winning this round, and the next round they completely changed their comp in order to protect the Ana. They like had a McCree and they had a Winston, but they were spending so much resources now in dealing with me that the rest of my team just stomped them through. They could not contest the point, and it was really effective. I think that it threw them off their game for sure.
Yeah, I think that can be really good. I just wanted to dispel one myth real quick, and that Winston is helpful to take care of a tracer, because if you like dive onto me while I'm attacking your Ana, it's gonna really affect me. But Winston is just easy kills for tracer, and I will seek them out and try to shoot them in the face to get my pulse bomb. And I really just feel no fear when I see a Winston.
I completely agree with you. I think that a lot of people take Winston to counter Tracer, kind of like they do to counter Genji. But I think that Tracer has a huge advantage in that her blinks are in much lower cooldown, and she has recall, which allows her to like dodge Winston quite easily. And one thing that I've noticed is that Winstons get really overconfident against you because, you know, they're trying to counter you. And they will blindly chase you to the point where, like you said, you can just run backwards and shoot them in the head. And they're very big framed, so it's very easy for you to land kills, or even sometimes easier when they're chasing you. Just you run backwards and literally throw the pulse bomb straight at them, and because they're so tunnel vision into chasing you, it's just really easy to land.
Just walk right into it. Yeah, I think they're usually surprised by how much damage Tracer's going to do to them very quickly. If you really want to counter a Tracer, Roadhog is definitely the tank you want to go with.
Oh my god, a Roadhog with good hooks, yeah, can definitely do some damage to Tracer.
Very frustrating.
Absolutely. Although it's a great sponge ult for you sometimes too. Once they use the hook, you can really build your ultimate with them. All right, let's move on to the second part of your guide. This is more about like the bread and butter of playing Tracer. We talked about the main points of what you want to be doing around the game. You want to secure kills, you want to harass, and then you want to be looking out after Symmetra and her constructs. Those are kind of like the main points. But during the fight, there's a lot of things that you have to think about. And also you have to think about how you engage with your team. And I think that you do a great description on how to actually play Tracer with your team, and you cover it with your 5-phase process, as you call it. So how about you guide us a little bit through it?
Yeah, so I have a 5-phase process to be like the Tracer 101 on how to do your job. I don't think it's the only way to play Tracer, and I actually think pros play a little bit differently, like more out of an objective, stick to your team type of Tracer and then weave through the enemies. But I think that can be really difficult when you're first starting out. So what I do is called like I said, the 5-phase process. And it's basically 5 steps that you do in order to flank behind the enemy team and accomplish your job. So the first step in that is flanking. And what we're going to be doing is putting the enemy team into a pincer maneuver. And that's when we are on one side of the enemy team and our team is on the other side of the enemy team. So effectively, they are wedged between us. So that's our goal and what we're trying to set up here. Now, to accomplish that, I like to flank around in ways that will be unseen by the enemy team, or at least I want to get around the enemy team. If they saw me, I want to disappear for a little while and just get behind their back lines and then kind of wait a minute and then proceed from there. Once I do that, I go into the second phase, which I call the study phase. And in the study phase, I'm studying the enemy team. I'm figuring out where the DPSs are, where the tanks are, where the healers are, if there's any threats that I need to worry about. And then I'm looking for what opportunity I need to find. So if I see like a Zenyatta is backed up from their team, okay, that's great. I'm just going to go for that and try to kill him. The studying the enemy phase part is really where you figure out what your opening assassination target will be. And that's the third phase, is that the opening attack, the opening assassination move. Now, when I go to do that third phase, before I even go in, once I've decided my target, before I go in, I look for the arrows above my team, the chevrons. And I look to see how engaged they are, or whether my front line is meeting their front line at that time. And I wait until that moment where they meet, and maybe even like a half second longer. I want the enemy team to be really distracted by my own team when I go in, because I don't want to get focused down immediately and just be useless. So once that happens, once my team is engaged, I will go in and then try to assassinate my target. From there, it really gets a little bit improvisational, because if the third phase was a success, then it's great. Maybe I'll back off a second and then come back in and try to get the next enemy and then keep going from there until we snowball to a victory. Or maybe I didn't get that first one. I didn't get that first assassination, and I need to back off and just retry the whole process again. So it's the fourth phase I call winning the fight, and it's a little bit different depending on the situation and depending on how the team fight's developing over time. But the general principle is, at that point, I'm really weaving in and out of the fight. Sometimes I'm in my own back line to recover blinks or get heals, but I'm trying to work my way in and around the teams and in and around the fight to chip off that next enemy and just keep going down the list until all of them are gone. And then the last phase of the 5-phase process is reflect and reassess. I think this is incredibly important as Tracer, and if you don't do it, you're going to struggle. It's not enough to know, it's not enough to just assess yourself when you're playing Tracer. It's not enough to just assess your own game. Yes, you can go, oh, I missed that shot. I should have killed that person or whatever. But what you really need to be paying attention to is how your actions are affecting, or not affecting enough, the actions of your allied team. So when you're flanking, there's a huge opportunity cost to you flanking. That is a hero that could have been in the death ball, but is now out going on a solo mission. So you really have to make sure that your solo mission is doing enough to actually make the pick of Tracer be worth it. And it's a delicate balance, and if it's not working, then sometimes you just switch off Tracer and you go pick something else. But the important thing is to really think about, am I providing enough value? And if I'm not, how can I provide enough value?
And that part is really important. Let's summarize it really quick. So steps 1 through 5 are flanking, positioning yourself in the backline, so that in the pincer style maneuver, so that you can kind of clamp down on the enemy team with your team. Once you're there, you study the enemy, you pick your priority targets, you see who's out of position or who is an easy target for you, and you go into the third phase, opening the attack. You open on them, and hopefully you get the kill. If you get the kill, you reassess, you improvise a little bit, and try to get the rest of the team with your team and win the fight from there. If you can't, you kind of like rinse and repeat with your team until you are able to do this. And the last phase is reflect and reassess after every battle. Make sure that you are thinking about what happened, what went wrong, if you are providing enough for your team, and if you should be maybe thinking about switching to another hero, because Tracers maybe not being as effective against their current lineup. One thing that, or a couple of things that I want to mention about it, because your plan is very solid, but I do like what you said in the beginning, that this is not the only way to play Tracer. But I think this is a very standard and surefire way to be effective with Tracer. Like you said, there's tons of playstyles in Overwatch, especially the pros. Once they've mastered some of these heroes, can really do anything they want with them just because they are so familiar with the game and the hero's playstyle. But I think just for starting out, this is a really good general guide on how to follow, how to think about the hero. But let's touch on a little bit about some of the weak spots or some of the things that you have to keep in mind while doing this five-phase process. You briefly touched on a little bit on the flanking part, where you said that once you're flanking, there's a big opportunity cost that your team doesn't have you with them. Like if you were a soldier instead, you were in the front line, hitting that Reinhardt shield, helping you win the battle, that is some tangible value that you're providing right there. But if instead you're flanking with Tracer, you're not really providing a lot of value when you're doing that, aside from positioning yourself. So you have to be very aware of when you choose to do the flanks. Generally, you want to be flanking as your team is organizing and getting ready to approach the front line. If you see your team engage, and once your team is engaging, you decide to go flank, you are putting your team at a huge disadvantage. And likewise, when you said on the engagement part, you have to be looking at the chevrons over the heads of your enemy team. Even if you don't see them currently because you're behind the wall or behind enemy lines, you have to be very aware of where your team is positioned. And the chevrons are a great way to orient yourself. If you're familiar with the maps in Overwatch, you can generally have a pretty good idea of where your team is standing currently just by looking at those triangles and their position. And make sure that you engage when they engage. If they engage and you don't engage right after, like I said, you're leaving your team with a 5v6. Is there anything that you want to add in here?
Yeah, so like you're saying, you really have to be around when the fights are actually happening. That's a huge thing as Tracer. You can't be off somewhere at that time. That should be done before the fight happens. I try to get my flanks done before my team engages. That way, when we do engage, I can just get right into the fight right away, and I'm in the position I want to be. I'm in that pincer. But if you're off flanking during that time, then you can really be hurting your team because you're basically giving the enemy team a man advantage. You're basically making it 5v6, and that's no good. The other thing is the shield battle is a great referendum on how well you're doing and how well you're overcoming or not overcoming that opportunity cost of having the flanker. So as Tracer, you're probably going to lose the shield battle most of the time. Now your job is to make it so that you do enough damage, you do enough harassment, you get enough kills, whatever. You do enough value for your team that losing that shield battle doesn't matter. So if you can provide enough value within that time frame, the shield battles, then it's worth it. But if you can't, then it might be time to rethink and reassess what you're doing with Tracer or just switch to another hero.
Absolutely. And you have to think about it from the standpoint of usually that shield battle is so effective and so important because the rest of the enemy team is relying on that shield to stay up so they can keep pressuring you. Once that shield is gone, they're kind of vulnerable and you have a lot more engaging time. If you're not shooting at the shield, but instead you're behind harassing all their enemy team to the point where the shield doesn't matter that much because there's nobody putting pressure behind the enemy Reinhardt because everyone's trying to deal with you, the shield becomes super ineffective and at that point almost useless, right? Because there's nobody to cover. So you should be thinking about it like that, being that mosquito that it really disrupts the enemy backline. And once your team is able to engage, their front line is not going to have that much support because you're putting that much pressure on their supports and stuff.
Right. It's if you're not going to win that shield battle, you got to find the value elsewhere. And like you said, doing enough harassment, doing enough damage onto that enemy team can be enough. It's a constant thing you have to monitor, and it's something that happens in every team fight that you have to be aware of and have to always be just evaluating your own play with.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about Tracer's movement, a little bit of her blink management, maybe your philosophy of how to use blinks, when to save them, when to use them, when you want to make sure to engage with them. Because I know there's a lot of questions on how you should be using the blinks, and I do see a lot of Tracers really misusing their clicks and putting themselves in very awkward situations that they shouldn't be as Tracer. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, almost as an aside before we begin, I just want to say, when you're playing Tracer, you can't be using the shift key for your blinks. I think you're going to have a very hard time learning the hero and getting good with the hero and playing her at the fast speed that she needs to be played at if you're using shift. I think you need to be using right click to be most effective with your blinks. Now, after that, I think the number one thing I see with Tracer players who are new and learning the hero, and the mistake that they're making, is they're using maybe 1, 2, or even 3 blinks to get into a fight, to get into an engagement. But when they get there, they're all dressed up and they have nowhere to go because they need those blinks for the engagement themselves, but they wasted all of them just getting there. So that's why I kind of came up with the flanking process, is because what that will allow me to do is basically just walk up to the enemy team. Maybe I use a blink, but I'm actually trying to avoid using blinks when I'm doing my opening assassination move and getting into a fight, because the blinks are very loud and will make noise and will alert enemies to my presence. Where if I just crouch walk behind them, or even walk behind them, because Tracer's footsteps are so quiet, you can just get a sneak attack, and now you're in the position you wanted to be, and you have all of your resources available to you. So once I'm in those types of engagements and I'm fighting something, now I have all my blinks to use them to move around and avoid being hit. Because the number one thing I want to use my blinks for is to not be aimed at. I don't want the enemy team to be focusing me down, or like, even have a couple moments where they can fix in on my position and do damage to me. Whenever I see that their aim has adjusted to me, that is my signal that I want to blink to move to the next spot. And I think there are a lot of different moves that you can do with your blinks. So I'm going to go over a couple of them right now that I usually use. The fundamental one, the go-to move for
The bread
Tracer,
and butter.
the bread and butter, is you have someone in front of you, you're looking at them, you blink behind them, you blink through them, you turn around, do a 180, and you shoot them. That is like the standard fundamental move of Tracer. But there are a lot of variations you could do to play off of that. So sometimes I don't blink through a hero. Sometimes I'll just blink to the left, or blink to the right, or blink diagonally in one of the directions. Or you can do something kind of cheeky where okay, I've been blinking behind this person and turning around a while. The next one, and I have some blinks I can use, I'm actually going to jump through them and then immediately blink backwards to my original location. And they'll just be like, okay, where did Tracer go? Where did Tracer go?
Fancy here.
Yeah, and then you just start doing tons of damage without being shot at. And that's always your goal with the blinks, is to put yourself in a position where you can do tons of damage and they're always one step behind you.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that's great advice for anyone trying to learn Tracer over here. I think sometimes people get really greedy with their blinks and they are like, oh, I'll just hang here a little longer, do a little more damage, and then I'll blink. But the truth about Tracer is that she is very squishy. And
yeah,
if people have you on their sights, it's just so easy to kill you with so many different things, like the hook, or helix rocket, or flashbang headshot to your head. Headshot to your head. Look at me saying these words. But etc. Like you get the point. You're just very, very vulnerable, even to chip damage, right? Just like a Roadhog throwing his shotgun at you like 2 times might kill you.
And that adds up. Like, you can't be taking chip damage from multiple locations, because that'll just kill you because you have such little health. You really need to be avoiding all damage entirely.
Exactly. All damage at all points. And I think it's a great rule of thumb. Like, as soon as they turn around and have sights on you, to just blink away and reposition yourself. You don't even have to get out of the fight. But as long as you're being very smart about your blinks and kind of like change it up, like you mentioned, like blinking through them, sometimes just diagonally. Sometimes you do that little fancy jump over and blink backwards. You basically want to keep them on their toes at all times and just being very annoying. And as soon as you feel like you're very vulnerable and you're not going to be able to dodge them anymore, just get out of there and wait a couple seconds until the blinks are back up and rinse and repeat, I feel.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that as you gain rank, as you increase your skill rating, you're going to have less time to sit at those locations between blinks. So when you're starting out, if you're like in like platinum or gold or whatever, people aren't going to have as great aiming mechanics. So you can kind of get away with hanging around for a little bit while longer.
Or sometimes they don't even turn around that fast.
Yeah.
Like, they even ignore you sometimes.
Yeah. So you need to be cognizant of the fact that if you really want to rank up with her, your windows are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So you got to be better at playing that.
Yeah, you got to get a lot faster, because once you start getting to like diamond, especially close to master, like people will react to you very fast. And there's nothing worse than that Roadhog that turns around super fast and just hooks you, because he's practiced that hook so many times and he's good at it.
Yeah. Like Roadhogs, where I'm at, if I don't dodge their hook with like a bait, or just I knew it was coming and I dodged it, they will hit me 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like it's entirely on me to make them miss because they're not going to miss on their own.
Yeah, but it's very rarely that they miss. Yeah, it has to be on you to anticipate it for sure.
And Hanzos actually get really difficult too. I think Hanzos are more difficult than McCree's.
With the scatter arrow?
Scatter and just their regular arrow.
Right, yeah, one really headshot or just one hit, something just outright kills you, right?
Yeah, you really need to like get in their personal space, but it's like you're avoiding that insta-gib and you're working so hard to do it and you're trying to blink away from their aim and you can get them so low, but it just takes one arrow from them. They can have missed the first 4 and it takes one arrow and they just kill you. So it can be a very frustrating fight, especially as Hanzos get better.
There you go, guys. You heard it here first. Hanzo counter the Tracer. Now everyone's gonna start playing Hanzo, being like, "But Omnic Lab told us that."
Yeah, I hope not.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, let's move on to a couple of the listener questions. Is there anything else you wanted to add about maneuvering tips or blank management, any of that? I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
Sure. And also, how about you tell us a little bit of the other Tracer content or some of the other guides that you're planning on doing if you haven't already released them?
Yeah, so right now I'm currently working on a mechanics guide where, I'll go over some of the things that we've already gone over, just about like blink management, recall management, how to improve your tracking, how to improve your sticky bombs. So that guide I'm hoping to get out later this week sometime. But right now, I've also got a series that I'm working on. It's just I'm going through every single map in the game and I'm showing you the flank routes that I use as Tracer when I play. And not only am I showing you some of the tricks and some of the map tricks that you might not know Tracer can do, but I'm also giving you some firsthand experience and like, hey, there might be a Roadhog here, or there might be a McCree here, or this is what you might have to deal with if you go this way. So if you want help in figuring out how you flank teams, then you guys should check out those videos.
And those are really important because a big part of Tracer's playstyle is really knowing how to maneuver the map and how to get around to places, because you can be very sneaky if you really know those maps effectively and those little nooks and crannies. You will catch people by surprise so good like that. So definitely check those out. Great stuff you have over there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's really intuitive, but I think it's nice to have it laid out in a way that I've done this a bunch of times. That I've got over 100-something hours on Tracer, so I can kind of give you a little bit of a head start on what you're going to experience when you do those routes.
Absolutely. Cool. To close this out, I did want to ask you a couple of listener questions that we got from the chat. Let's start with the first one from Switch. He asks, how can I practice sticking bombs? I'm not even sure mechanically how it works exactly. That's a good question, Switch.
Yeah, so I think sticky bombs are almost the most difficult part of Tracer, but they actually have the potential to be one of the most powerful as well. So it's fair in that way. Sticky bombs have this weird arc to them where you kind of throw it. So if you just like looked horizontally, just parallel to the ground in front of you, you'd throw it, and it would have this arc where it went up and then down like a parabola to the ground. So what I've found to be an effective way of sticking them onto people is you get very close to someone and then you kind of angle your view down a little bit to the ground. And what that will do is, instead of throwing your pulse bomb up with its initial motion, it'll actually make it so that you're throwing your pulse bomb horizontally with your first motion. And that will make it so that you can just go place it onto people a lot easier. And I think that'll end up being a lot more intuitive to people. Now, as you get better and you've thrown more pulse bombs, I actually throw a lot of long distance pulse bombs, a lot of big arc shots at something that's kind of maybe like 5 meters from me. But those are really difficult to do. And I think when you're not used to the arc pattern, that's not something you want to be trying all the time. And you really want to get sure sticks. I think starting out, putting them onto tanks, it is a good way to ensure that you're going to get value out of the pulse bomb or putting them onto graviton surges, because it's an easy thing to waste. It's probably the easiest ultimate in the game to waste.
It's very easy to waste. Yeah, it has such a small radius, and if you don't stick it, it's so easy to just run away from it.
Yeah. So a couple tips I have is that I can think of is, one, when you're putting it on a graviton surge, put it on the ground, because that will actually do more AoE damage than just if you stuck someone. And like I've had surges where I stick someone and then not everyone in the surge dies, and the team goes like, what just happened? Why didn't the pulse bomb kill everyone? It's because the damage got mitigated by you sticking it onto someone, and it would have just killed everybody if you just put it on the ground.
It's a really weird like thing that happens. I wonder if it's because like some heroes end up behind other heroes and they block some of the damage.
Right. But I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I have heard that before, and I started trying myself, just sticking them on the ground, and they are definitely more effective that way. And it's a huge combo. Just pulse bomb plus graviton is like one of the most insane things you can do in a fight. I think so.
The other thing is, I've learned that if you find an enemy in a corner, you don't need to be accurate with your pulse bomb anymore. Because if you throw it in a way so like they're sitting towards the corner, if you throw it kind of in front of the corner, they can't go anywhere. If they try to run through your pulse bomb, they can't get past it fast enough. They're dead. If they try to stay where they are dead.
Oh, you mean like throwing it on the ground, like a little bit in front of them, but in the corner?
So yeah. They're standing on a corner, and you throw it like if you did like an 45-degree angle from the corner, you measure it out like a couple feet. That's where you'd want to throw it, because at that point there's just nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's no direction they can go to avoid being blown up.
Yeah, geometrically they're screwed.
Yes. The last thing is, practice pulse bombs against Anabots in a custom game. You can set up the game so that it's headshots only, the Anas won't hurt you, and you can set your ultimate charge rate to go up to like 200%, so you get your pulse bombs really quick. I think practicing it in a game is really difficult, because you really just want to get a feel for what that impact is like and what that path is like for you to throw it. So a game is actually not a great way to be practicing the pulse bomb. It's much better to go into a custom game and just throw like hundreds of bombs in a row, so you can get a good feel for it. And you're going to improve a lot quicker that way than if you're in a game trying to use it and trying to learn it on the fly like that.
I think that's a great tip, and people should, if you really want to get good at pulse bombs and start doing those crazy trick shots and throwing them through walls and landing them like below through the parabola stuff, you really want to be practicing like that, because like you said, well, in the game you maybe get 4 to 6 pulse bombs, like that is at most, right? And like that's just not enough practice, especially because you want to do this often to build up the muscle memory. Yeah,
and doing it this way too you can go, oh, I just had that pulse bomb like 15 seconds ago. I can throw my next one now, and I had a feel from the last one. Like playing in a game it's like trying to practice shooting during a pickup basketball game. Yeah, like shooting is an element of it, but you're not going to get better at shooting playing a game of basketball. You need to go just shoot around.
Yep, I agree. For a second, I thought you were like shooting guns. I'm like, yeah, you're definitely going to get better shooting at a basketball game. They're probably going to kick it out pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to the next question. This one is by Supervale. She asks, who is a good second DPS to go along with Tracer, and what non-cough maps are best for Tracer?
Okay, so I'll start with the King of the Hill question. I think Tracer is really good on pretty much every map in the game. I think that if you're playing Tracer well, then you shouldn't let the fact that it's not King of the Hill deter you. The reason that King of the Hill is where Tracer's bread and butter is because team fights are really brawly and almost like deathmatch, and you can get around the enemy team. Like, flanks are very easy to come by because most of the maps on King of the Hill are basically circles. The thing is, those conditions of being able to flank around the enemy team and making a brawl fight can happen on any map. It's just that they're really conducive to happening on King of the Hill maps. But you can go create those conditions anywhere. So I think Tracer is very powerful on every map in the game, and she needs to be explored way more than just King of the Hill maps. A good place to start if you're not sure of where you should be using her and you're kind of new to Tracer is very good at dealing with first capture points for hybrid and 2CP maps, because players, especially in unorganized teams, really at all ranks, not even low ranks, at all ranks, they like to stand at choke points and just poke there. And as the offense, you're at such a disadvantage to be behind the choke point. You're really playing into the defense's hands and doing what they want you to do by standing at that choke point. So Tracer can really just get through that choke point, start getting picks, make the team fight a fight, and get help your team get through. Maybe you touch the point and you peel the enemy team off the choke point. You can do a lot of things with Tracer to make those first capture points a lot less intimidating, take a lot less time, and just your success rate on those points will just go way up if you get good at a flanker.
Definitely. How about the second DPS? What do you think goes well with it?
So the second DPS, my favorite to go with Tracer is Pharah. And that's because not only does Pharah do a ton of damage, but she also provides the best distraction in the game possible. So the reason I really love Tracer Pharah is if you both pick a target, say Soldier 76 or Ana, now that Soldier 76 or Ana needs to find a way to look up and backwards at the same time. And that's just never going to happen. So the reason Pharah Tracer works so well is Pharah puts in one rocket on that Soldier 76 or Ana, and then Tracer can come in and put one clip into that person, and that person's dead. It's a really easy kill for both Pharah and Tracer. It almost feels like you're cheating. It's so easy.
I remember we had this conversation. It kind of surprised me a little bit because honestly, with our team, we haven't tried it that much. But since you mentioned it, we were like, you know what? Let's try it. And when it works, like it works. Like sometimes you get those teams that can like really like stick together and like work through it. But like, oh my God, is it a lot of pressure when your Pharah is just up above them and you're just behind them? You feel like they cannot deal with either. And it does feel like super overpowered sometimes, especially if they're not providing like extra help to that soldier or to that Ana and they kind of like ignore him for a little bit. It's just really easy to get picks with that combo. And I have been really liking it.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful if you can synergize the target selection of that Pharah and that Tracer. If you can both get onto the same person, it's going to be really powerful. And you're kind of wasting it a little bit if you can't manage to do that.
Yeah, you definitely want to be engaging the same targets for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I want to mention is if you pick a Pharah or a Genji or even a Sombra to pair with your Tracer, then that can really help Tracer out. But the other philosophy you can be using for your second DPS pick is you want to put a DPS in the death ball. You want to put like a McCree or a Soldier 76. Because like we were saying earlier, there's always an opportunity cost to being away from the death ball and flanking. So if you put two flankers out there, well, now you've really gone all in on flanking, and you better be getting value out of that, or you're just going to flat out lose. But if you put one of those DPS in the death ball, you're almost like hedging your bet a little bit, and know that Tracer doesn't have the help on damage to go get assassinations and stuff. But a Soldier 76 in the death ball, it almost buys you more time, because at least now you have something very powerful damage-wise working on their Reinhardt shield and working on that front line. So it's not as noticeable for your team that you're missing something on that front line.
Right. No, I do agree. That's one thing to note with the Pharah Tracer combo, and especially if you're still running a Reinhardt with that comp, your Reinhardt is not
Yeah.
going to have very much pressure to put out himself. So it's really up to the Tracer and the Pharah to clear out the backline as soon as they can so that your Reinhardt can actually push through. Because if you can't, then yeah, your Reinhardt is just going to be kind of standing there useless, like not being able to push through anytime.
I'm just going to go through real quick. This is my favorite lineup for putting Tracer into.
Go for it.
I'd say Winston, because he's going to dive whatever that I want to go fight. And whatever. So Winston, Pharah, Tracer, Zarya, Lucio, Zenyatta. So the way that works is it's just a dive comp, basically. Zenyatta puts a Discord onto something, Winston dives in onto that target, and then Tracer comes in from her hiding spot, from her flank, and Pharah comes in from the sky, and everyone converges on that one target. And while Lucio speed boosts everything and speeds up the whole action, and that target just gets obliterated like instantly if you do it right. So it's a really satisfying and really powerful way to play if you can sync up all those people and get it right and get it working right.
Agreed. That comp sounds really awesome. I'm definitely going to be trying that. I think we've played a little bit with that before, actually. All right, we're running a little bit of time. It's going a little longer. Not that I mind. It's been an awesome conversation, and I really enjoyed discussing Tracer with you. I've been playing her a lot more since the last time we spoke, and I've been really enjoying her. So before we close out, the last question here is from Shockmaster. He asks about some of the sound settings that you use and how you pay attention to the sound. And I'm just gonna start it here really quick. I think that listening to sound with Tracer is super, super important, especially because you're flanking so much, and you're also looking for things like Symmetra Teleporter or her shield generator, which makes a huge hum and is one of the basic ways to find it. So you definitely want to be abusing your sound as Tracer. I'll let you finish this one off, and then we can wrap things up.
Yeah, the shield generator and the teleporter sound is a great feature because that's really how you can end up finding those and kind of like go to the locations that you normally know that they're at. And once you hear the hum, you're like, okay, it's here. And then you go from there. Mm-hmm. But the sounds are super important with Tracer, not only because you can like hear the threats and everything that's around you and all the sounds are really unique, but Tracer has like this innately disorienting play style of blinking around and switching directions and stuff and all that. So the sound can really help break through that clutter and keep you oriented within the game world. So I think sound's really important for that. As far as sound settings, I think something that you should do not only for Tracer but for all your heroes is just go ahead and turn the corny epic music off and just get rid of it entirely. I've actually recently done that as of like this week because I got made fun of for having it by some pro players. But it's been really helpful to have removed that music. And now it's like during those clutch team fights, those team fights at the very end of the game that really decided the game, you've got a clean audio experience to work off of. You don't have to like have that added pressure of that music for no reason. And that music is also cluttering up your sound space and messing with the information that you're receiving. So it just really cleans it up to get rid of it.
I agree. I think it's a pretty common tip for competitive players to just get rid of the music. And this is really like a judgment call. Like if you really like the build up that it creates towards the end and that excitement, because it does add a little bit to the feeling. That is up to you. I personally have turned mine off a long time ago. The game is definitely not as like filled with sounds and stuff, and the music is nice, but it definitely adds a little more to your competitive edge. Having those comms like cleared and being able to listen to all of the footsteps and where heroes are coming from, especially as Tracer, you end up a lot of times behind walls. So just being able to hear an enemy hero coming and be able to tell which enemy hero it is by the sound of their footsteps just gives you a lot of information with a hero that sometimes visually doesn't get that much.
Yeah, I've really kept it for so long because it does give you some good indicators as far as like, okay, they're capping the objective, or they're really close, like they're closing in on the objective on like a payload or something. But it's definitely been helpful to kind of get over those habits of depending on it to know that, oh, time's about to run out, and just go. Like, I can just get used to looking up at the clock instead of going for audio cues.
Yeah, you gotta
via the
look at
music.
the Overwatch timer rather than the music.
Yeah, like I found it was helpful, but it's actually more helpful to not have it.
Yeah. It's likewise with playing other music, like if you're trying to be the most competitive, you probably not want to have any background music. If you're just trying to chill and practice some stuff, then yeah, who cares? But you generally want to be able to listen to as much information as possible.
Yeah.
Cool. That'll do it for our interview about Tracer with Forrest from Fat Lit Gaming. Thanks again
Faulty
so much.
Lit Gaming.
Faulty Lit Gaming. My bad.
Close enough.
Close enough. It's been a long morning for me. Anyway, thank you so much for coming again and for redoing the interview. We certainly appreciate it. I know that our listeners will certainly appreciate it. And the invitation is extended for you to come back again, explore some more of your guides. And yeah, thanks again for coming to the show, Forrest.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've had a great time, and I hope I can come back someday soon.